What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Inside Inter Miami. I'm your host, Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor, joined as always by Michelle Kaufman, our Inter Miami beat writer. In a bit of a funk, not us, we're fine, but the team, not so much, is in a bit of a funk in August. We're going to go over the awful month that it's been. It began with the sad news of Lionel Messi's father passing away, and then the team getting eliminated from Leagues Cup much earlier than they expected in the group stage, and now a 5-game winless streak. So it doesn't matter if they're in Leagues Cup or MLS play. This team is not playing well right now, demonstrated by that recent loss 2-1 at home against the Toronto team that had only won one game since early August. Miami's now slipped 10 points behind first place Nashville. There's still time left. There's still 13 games to go, but a 10-point lead, and as we know, in the standings is a lot to overcome for any team, and they've slipped to third in the Supporter Shield race. So we're going to break down everything that's happening, the mounting pressure on Coach Guillermo Hoyos to turn this thing around. Can it be turned around, and how? We're going to dive into a lot of that. But let's start just with these last three games, Michelle, a 2-2 tie with Philly, which they were up in that game and let it slip away. They're lucky they didn't lose. Philly had a goal disallowed, if I remember correctly, in the second half of that game. And then, of course, an embarrassing loss to said Nashville team, which they are chasing, which Nashville still leads in the Eastern Conference. But a lot of defensive lapses. They make a goalie change. Doesn't seem to really make that much of a difference. Just what's wrong with this team?
Right now, a lot is
Everything.
wrong with this team. Other than Lionel Messi, who continues to carry the team as best he can. And even again, considering, the grief that he's still feeling, I'm sure, and what he's trying to overcome emotionally in his personal life, he's still doing what he's supposed to do. But he's just not getting much help. And the defensive lapses, they just keep happening, and we keep asking, and the answers are the same. We just keep making defensive mistakes. We keep making lapses. We keep making defensive mistakes. We keep giving up too many goals. Yes, exactly. That is our question. Why are you doing this? What is happening? They brought in Casemiro. This is a Brazilian player from the World Cup team who's played, big clubs in Europe. This was going to be supposed to help them, especially on the defensive part of the midfield. And so far, it really has not happened. The team has really been struggling. They've given up 13 goals in the 5-game stretch. They gave up 18 goals since the World Cup. They're just, giving up an average of 2 or 2+ goals per game. And you cannot win that way. We've said it a million times, and we keep asking the same questions. And, it just seems like they seem very disorganized. And we're going to get into Guillermo Hoyos in a minute here. But I wrote a story sort of analyzing and saying that the pressure is mounting on him because the team just looks, especially in transition, it's the same old story. They get trapped in transition. They don't have enough players who run. Let me put it this way. They don't have enough players who track back on defense. And we'll start with, I guess I said before that Lionel Messi does everything he can. Yes, he does everything. He's playing the way he has always played. But that means that he's not going to be racing back on defense. That is not his game. He does everything but that. And sometimes he drops back when he really feels he has to, but he's not a guy who's going to be running up and down the field, chasing down, balls, trying to recover, trying to break up passes in the midfield. That's not what he does. Then you've got Luis Suarez starting alongside him. When they play together, and this happened last year, we're going to talk later about what Javier Mascherano finally made a big change. But when those two guys play together, they have incredible telepathy near the box, in the box, scoring opportunities. They can still create magic and finish, and they can be lethal. On the other hand, there is a defensive liability, I think, and other people think. When the two of them play together, you've got two guys who are 39 years old who are not known for running back on defense. So then that puts a lot of pressure on the midfield, because the other teams are figuring out, even a team like Toronto, this is a team that had won only one game since early April, and they figured out a way to contain Messi and contain contain delivery to him. And when that happens and they get the ball, the other team, and they've got a couple of guys who are fast, Miami gets caught flat footed and they give up goals. It
Yeah.
happens over and over and over again.
I think it's past tense, not just figuring out. I think it's figured out. And at this point, the secret sauce is out. I think the blueprint is out there on how to beat this team. And Miami has to adjust. And I don't know. I mean, maybe the personnel, I mean, they seem to have personnel to be able to do it. It's like you said, up front, it's the same player with Messi and Suarez. Brilliant up front, brilliant on the offensive end, no doubt about it. Two of the best ever. But not on the back end. They're not going to get back there and do what needs to be done. So somebody else has to pick up the slack. They were missing Yannick Bright on Saturday. That doesn't help. I know he was serving a red card suspension. So another setback. But this isn't just last week. This is
right. No, they were
trend.
also missing. Yeah, it is a trend. In these recent games, okay, they were missing Yannick Bright in this last game, which he does play a defensive role in the midfield. They also have been missing the last few games, Mikhail. We never really talked that much about him, but this year he had been probably their most consistent center back, and he's been out with an ankle injury, and that does seem to hurt. They put in Lujan. Well, Lujan ended up leaving the game injured. Sergio Reguilon, seems like, a good guy, seems like he can do some things. He's played again in big clubs in Europe. They made a big deal when they signed him, but he continues to get injured. He came off this field injured this game. He came off injured as well. It looked like he pulled something while running. It was a non-contact injury. He was racing up the left sideline, and all of a sudden something, I guess, pulls, and he walks right off the field. It looked like it must have been a hamstring or something like that. We haven't been told yet exactly what it is, but he left the field injured again. And if it's a hamstring, we know how long that takes to heal. That can be a while. So, you've got these guys that are getting injured. There's no consistency, and the defense, they just seem to have lapse after lapse after lapse. They're very vulnerable, and the other teams know. It just seems like the other teams know how to score against them. Yeah, so Maxi Falcon, who had not been playing, has been playing again now because these other guys are injured.
Yeah, let's hear what Maxi had to say about the struggles.
Luchamos para volver a ese triunfo, que por ahí el año pasado tuvimos una racha mala en la cual también después pudimos salir adelante y terminamos siendo campeones. Entonces, en estos momentos obviamente todo se ve en color negro, pero yo creo que hicimos buenas cosas en el partido y hemos hecho buenas cosas en el partido. Son detalles, como dije el otro día, en el cual también ahora por ahí le están pegando al arco y está haciendo gol. Lamentablemente, cuando pasa eso, hay que estar más juntos que nunca, tratar de recuperarse y tratar de en la semana trabajar lo que se hizo mal, porque obviamente que hay cosas que se hicieron mal, pero bueno, como dijo David, tratar de cambiar rápido el chip porque hay que volver a la victoria lo antes posible.
Maxi, en este momento el entrenador se está responsabilizando de este momento del Inter de Miami. ¿Vos qué crees? ¿A qué se debe? ¿En qué hay que hacer hincapié? ¿Qué hay que mejorar?
No, creo que, bueno, por ser el técnico, ¿no? Y parte del cuerpo técnico también, ellos siempre, como decía, hacen la mea culpa y por ahí se echan toda la culpa, pero no es así. Somos un plantel, somos un grupo en el cual cuando ganamos, ganamos todo y cuando se pierde, perdemos todo. Como te dije, hay muchas cosas que mejorar, pero tenemos el plantel para hacerlo, tenemos grandes jugadores, entonces, tratar de mejorar en la semana, porque creo que no hay mucho más para decir. Creo que tuvimos la pelota hoy la mayoría del partido e intentamos por todos lados y bueno, no está saliendo tampoco, no está llegando el gol, o por ahí no están llegando tantos goles como por ahí nos merecemos, porque creo que, como te digo, hacemos mucho en el partido para eso.
Sí. ¿Sentís que al principio de la era de Hoyos, te acordás que jugaban con 5 defensores? ¿Sentís que una persona más ahí los ayudaría? ¿Cerraría algunos agujeros? ¿Cómo lo ves vos?
Es como te digo, ¿no? Por ahí, como te digo, ahora le están pegando al arco y está haciendo gol. Lamentablemente el fútbol tiene esas cosas. Hemos intentado con uno más, con uno menos en el medio y las cosas por ahora no salen. Y como te digo, hay que tener cabeza fría en este momento complicado. Por ahí el tema del planteamiento y eso ellos verán. Tuvimos una buena racha cuando empezó Guille, tuvimos varios partidos y ahora estamos en este momento en el cual hay que levantar cabeza, hay que estar con la confianza lo más arriba posible y tratar de revertir la situación, que el fútbol tiene estas cosas y lo más lindo después es cuando se llega al final y bueno, logramos lo que todos queremos.
Okay, so Maxi, as always, he he tries. He's trying to answer the questions. He doesn't really have the answers again of what's gone wrong. He said, "Look, we're in a bad stretch right now. Things look bleak, things look black." We had a similar situation last year. We were able to turn things around and win the championship. He said that as far as the game the other day, he said, we just gave up too many goals. They're shooting at the goal and they're scoring. Yep, that's what they're doing. They're shooting at the goal and they're scoring, Maxi. Anyway, he said, we did a lot of good things. He said he felt that they did a lot of good things and it was just details, that they didn't take care of details. And right now they have to stick together more than ever. They have to recover. They have to work hard and try to turn the page. He was asked, somebody said that the coach is taking the blame, that Guillermo Hoyos took the blame for the loss. And what does he think about that? And he said, well, coaches always take the blame, but we win as a team, we lose as a team. We have a whole roster. We are all to blame. We all have to take responsibility. He said again that he felt that the team did a lot of good things. He said, we possessed the ball. We had the ball the majority of the game. But he said, but the goals weren't coming. Unfortunately, we were not scoring the way we normally score. And on the other end, they took those shots and they went in. And it's true. This game was not a high scoring game. This was 2-1, but they gave up 2. They only scored 1. Messi scored the lone goal. Surprise, surprise. He's the only guy who came through. They scored 1 goal and he's not saying that. I'm saying that. I don't want to say Maxi's saying that part. Anyway, let me finish with Maxi. Maxi was asked also, would it help to have 5 guys in the back? Or, because sometimes earlier in the year they had 5 players in the back. Would it help to have another defender? And he said, well, we have played with more in the back. We've played with an extra person in the midfield defensively, and it doesn't seem to be helping that much. He said, right now, what we have to do is just keep a cool heads. As far as the tactics go, they'll take care of that. They'll figure that out, meaning the coaches. And that's what we're going to go into next. But the players are expecting that the coaches will figure it out.
Well, look, and taking the blame, noble. We've seen that coaches do that. Sometimes coaches may be figuring things out and they hold it back. They don't want to put it out there. They don't want to tell the press. But at this point, we're not seeing that on the field. And that's the issue. It's one thing if you're holding it back and you're saying the same old things and you're saying all the right things, but you're not seeing a change. And like we were talking about, yes, were they shorthanded in this last game? Yes, they were in the last couple games. But this has been going on for a bit. I mean, this is a pretty long winless streak at this point for a team that's at near the top in the MLS. To have a winless streak like this is not good. And then if you're not seeing those answers at some point, something has to be adjusted. Something has to change. Last year, there were changes made under previous leadership. But, Guillermo Hoyos, yes, like I said, he's saying all the right things. But at some point, it has to translate to something being done.
Yeah, because it's not this team. Believe me, that management and ownership, they cannot be happy. Okay. Right. This is not what they're spending all that money for.
Yep.
They have invested the most expensive roster in MLS history. There is no team in MLS history that has spent more money on its roster than this team. They have the best player of all time. They had on the field the other day 4 World Cup rostered players. Dane St. Clair was in goal, who was a Canadian World Cup goalkeeper. He didn't play in the games, but he was the second goalkeeper for the World Cup team of Canada. And then you had Rodrigo de Paul and Lionel Messi, who made it to the World Cup final, and Casemiro, who's playing for Brazil in the World Cup. You've got 4 World Cup players on an MLS squad. The club has spent more money than any other team. This is the defending champion. This team won the championship in December and won the Supporters' Shield the year before. They are now in a 5-game slump. Now, to their credit, they're still in second place. It's not time to panic per se, They're still in second place in the East, but they have dropped. They lost 8 points in 1 week span. They lost 8 points. They're down 10 points now behind Nashville for first place, which is a big gap to make up because Nashville is playing out of its mind. Nashville is playing great. They're going up, and Miami is going in the opposite direction. And then they're third place now in the Supporter Shield race. So, yes, they're still in second, but they're slipping. They're slipping, and there's 13 games left. And how long can you keep slipping before you can't recover? So it's dangerous. And this is a team that Jorge Mas said from the beginning and has been saying, this is a team, we built this team to win trophies. We're here to win trophies. They didn't win the CONCACAF Champions Cup. They were knocked out round of 16. Leagues Cup, whether we care or not about the Leagues Cup or whether it's a big deal or not, it is another trophy. It's another trophy that they were competing for, that they were knocked out in the first round in the group stage. So they lost 2 games out of 3. They were out. So that's a second trophy that they're not going to get. The only 2 trophies left are Supporter Shield and MLS Cup. That's what's left. And they are slipping in those standings. And a team with this level of talent, should not be where it is right now.
Well, even more alarming than slipping in the standings is just a fundamental problem that they're having, that if it continues and it carries over, doesn't matter what seed they end up in the playoffs, they're not going to last very long in the playoffs, because any of those teams that'll be there in the playoffs will be able to beat them if they follow this strategy, if they follow this blueprint that even the dregs of the MLS are following with success. I mean, we're talking about, you're mentioning a team that hadn't won since April. I mean, and I don't know. It's an alarming trend that has to change for them. So let's hear from Guillermo Hoyos, who talked about the defense.
Buenas noches, profesor Hoyos. Javier Rodríguez con Fan Network TV. En el este, Inter Miami es el cuarto equipo que más goles ha recibido en esta temporada, 40 goles, 19 después de la para del Mundial. ¿Considera usted que esto es un síntoma de algo que esté pasando en el equipo?
A ver, es obvio que lo primero y principal, que todo lo que está pasando es una responsabilidad mía. Si los chicos dan el máximo siempre, sí, se manifiestan siempre. Es una responsabilidad personal y bueno, y eso hace que realmente nos duela también a todos, no solamente a uno, le duele todo al cuerpo técnico, a toda la gente que trabaja con uno, porque a veces esa responsabilidad es muy dolorosa, pero también hemos tenido muchas situaciones en la vida que ha pasado también esa dificultad, vamos a llamarle, ¿vale? Y bueno, la dificultad se tiene que convertir en cosas que hay que solucionarla, y eso no tiene ninguna vuelta en ese sentido, ¿vale? Por eso hay que estar ahora aquí, por el hecho del resultado, que es obvio que, y siempre digo yo, es decir, la responsabilidad es el que está sentado acá.
Okay, so he was asked specifically, your team is 4th in the East for the most goals conceded, 40 goals. Your team has conceded this season 40 goals, 19 after the World Cup. What do you say about this trend, about this problem that your team is having? He specifically asked about goals conceded and defense. And the answer was, I take responsibility. I take the blame as the coach. The players are giving their maximum. The players continue to show up, and this hurts us all. This is very painful, but we have also had other difficult things happen in our lives, and we just have to find a way to solve them. So, I mean, he does not answer the specific question, which is, what is wrong with your defense? Why has your defense with all the players that you have on this roster, why have they given up among the most goals in the East and, 19 goals after the World Cup? What is the problem? And he raises his hand and says, I guess I am the problem. I'm taking the blame. The players are giving their maximum. They're showing up, and this is very painful. And we've had things happen in our lives before, and we just have to find a way to solve it. So, again, like you said, Noble, he is taking responsibility. He didn't have, at least he didn't share. If he knows what the problem is defensively, he's not sharing it. If he thinks deep down that maybe having Luis Suarez and Messi playing together is not the best thing for the defense, he's not saying that. Or if he thinks that some of the players that they have maybe have not lived up to the expectations when they signed them, he's not saying that either. And this is a guy who, by the way, before he took this role, before he inherited this job, when Mascherano stepped down in April, he was the sporting director of the team. He was the general manager of this team. So he is the guy who was responsible for bringing in the players, the newer players on this team from this year and last year. He was very involved in bringing these particular players in. And so now to bring in Reguilón, he brought in Reguilón. He brought in Berterame. He's brought in, Caicedo, the young Ecuadorian guy who came in, in the defense. He's the guy who's bringing in Mura. He brought in Mura. All these players that have come in are players that he brought in as the sporting director. He's now the coach. So, he should take responsibility. He is taking responsibility. And now the question is, can he turn things around? Because the pressure is on him. He speaks in a lot of philosophical terms and whatever. But at the end of the day, whether it's fair, whether it's not, whatever, the coach has to take responsibility when a team is sliding, and especially a team that has this level of talent.
Well, they have to find a way. They have to find a way to adjust. And that's what I mean. Like, he's saying all this stuff, and, coaches do keep things close to the vest or whatever, but you're not seeing an adjustment. Your eyes are not seeing this team make an adjustment and improve on that end. So until that happens, do they have an answer, or are they just holding back the answer? And that's the thing.
Yeah. And his substitutions also, you just don't know. There doesn't seem to be, how can I say it? I said in my story that they seemed rudderless. It just seems like sometimes when he talks about the greatness of the players, and when he's been asked, are you worried? Over the last few games, after the games, it's been always kind of a depressing press conference. And he's asked, are you worried about, these continuing losses or whatever? And he always says, we have the greatest player of all time. We have monsters on this team. We have great players, and they're going to figure out a way to turn it around, and they're going to turn it around because we have all this talent. He brings up over and over how much talent they have and how great they are and how much talent they have. But having the talent is not enough. They need a plan. There has to be a plan. There has to be tactics. There has to be organization. There has to be strategy. And the other teams, like Toronto, coached by Robin Fraser, a local guy, by the way, from Miami, Palmetto High School, FIU. This is a local Miami guy. This was a very important game for him. His whole family and all his friends and his FIU teammates and his Palmetto High School friends were all there at the game. It was a big, important game for him. And he came in here with a team that had won only one game since April, and he figured out a plan of how to beat Miami. Miami needs to figure out a plan how to beat these other teams, especially we're not talking about Nashville now, the best team right now in the league. We're talking about Philadelphia and Toronto, teams that were toward the bottom of the table.
Yeah, he's leaning on a script, which is to sing Messi and everyone else's praises and this and that. But at some point, the script isn't enough. You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be something there, and they have to figure out how to beat anyone at this point. Forget about if they're at the top of the table or at the bottom of the table. They got to beat someone.
They have to win. And I asked him, as a follow-up to what he had said earlier, I asked him the question. I said, What is the problem? Is it tactics? Is it the lineup? Is it the personnel? Is it that they're too tired? They did play a lot of games over 21 days. They were playing every 3
They were
days,
playing the
but
two, right.
so was everybody else, though, is the thing. It's not really an excuse because all the teams, it's not like the other teams were not, and they were in some special tournament. They were all playing a lot of games. They were
MLS
all
was
playing, but
between Leagues Cup and MLS catching up after the World Cup. It was a frenzy for everybody. So
it was a frenzy for everyone. So I said, is it they're fatigued? Is it fatigue? Is it that they are uninspired? Is it the tactics? Is it the lineups? That's what I asked him, and here's what he had to say.
Buenas noches, Guillermo.
¿Cómo le va? ¿Cómo está usted?
Bien. ¿Qué pueden cambiar? ¿Qué tú crees es más la alineación? ¿Es táctica? ¿Es que jugaron sin ánimo esta noche? ¿Es que están cansados?
No.
¿Qué tú crees?
Nunca,
¿Qué son los problemas?
Nunca nuestros jugadores juegan sin ánimo. Sí, nunca. Y realmente es una situación que lo estamos viviendo y lo tenemos que afrontar. En este caso nosotros como responsabilidad, en este caso como uno responsabilidad, y no le escapamos a la responsabilidad, ¿vale? Lo tenemos muy claro, eso, muchos años de fútbol, y realmente cuando se comenzamos, gracias a Dios, muy bien, y siempre fuimos muy cautos también en todo eso. No somos personas somos personas de bien.
Vamos a
ferviente creyente en Dios, y no renuncio a eso.
Okay, so I mentioned the question that I had asked, and he said, no, this team never plays without spirit. He totally discounted that idea that the team was uninspired. He said this team never plays without spirit, never. He said, this is a situation that we're living through right now. It's something we have to face. It's something we have to take responsibility for. We're very clear on that. I think he was talking about the coaching staff. He said we have a lot of years of experience in football. And when we started, meaning when he and his staff took over this team, he said, when we started, thank God we played very well, but we were also very cautious during that time. We are good people. And then he said, we are believers in God. We are believers in God, and I will not give that up. I will continue to have that belief. So, once again, I mean, he's saying what he feels when he's asked these questions, but he's not sharing with us anyway. And he does he's a coach who evades any questions that are specific, that have to do with tactics or lineups or specific players, injuries, anything. He evades those questions and generally likes to say that those are things that are discussed behind closed doors. So he's not really a coach. He is not Javier Mascherano. He is not Phil Neville. He's not a guy who's going to be super open and just share everything with the public and with the media. But I have to say that he shares less than most coaches that I've been around. He just doesn't answer the questions. And, I don't know, again, like, does he have the answers and he just doesn't share them, or he doesn't have the answers?
Yeah.
We're about to find out, because we're about to find out. Is he going to make changes? Are we going to see some changes in the lineup? Are we going to see some changes in the tactics? Because we mentioned before, you and I both mentioned that last year, in the beginning of September, the team was struggling a little bit. And Javier Mascherano made two bold moves. One is he benched Ustari, who was a really good guy, a team leader, Argentine, one of Messi's good friends. And he benched him after he had started all year and put in Rocco Rios Novo, who basically had not played, a 23-year-old backup, put him in, and he really stepped up and took him all the way to the MLS Cup. The other thing he did was he benched Suarez. And he said that that's one of the most difficult things he had ever done. This is a guy who was his own teammate in Barcelona, Javier Mascherano's teammate in Barcelona, one of Messi's closest friends, an icon, a legend, a Uruguayan legend who had scored 600 goals. But, you know, Mascherano felt that he and Messi were not working well together, especially against certain opponents, that they needed more speed up front to get verticality, as the announcers like to call it, someone who can run behind the defense. And they made those changes and everything changed. They rolled through the playoffs. They were winning by 5 goals, 4 goals, 3 goals. Right. They just crushed everybody.
Well, look,
but it took big changes.
Yeah, Oyo's already made the goalie move, and it hasn't really panned out too. Hasn't really made that much of a difference. But I think tactically they're going to have to do something similar. They're going to really have to do something similar, and maybe break up the superstars on the field the way they did last season. Change it up. I mean, because you need people to drop back. I mean, forget it. Especially now, they're going to attack. Every team is going to attack that weakness that they have and take their chances and realize, okay, we concede Messi a goal or two, but hey, if we get 3, who cares? We're still going to end up on top, or we're going to get a point at least out of it. Screw it. Let's just do it that way. So until they adjust, forget it. I mean, they're going to have to, the only way they're going to win is if they score 5, 6 goals, and that's not going to happen against everybody.
Yeah. I do think the goalkeeper change, I do think, and I like Rocco, but I do think that Dane performed better. In the last 2 games was a 2-2 tie. No, it was Philadelphia, and they gave up goals in the end.
Maybe
but I don't know that they were.
Yeah,
I don't know that they were necessarily
his
fault.
Yeah.
I don't think it was necessarily his fault. This game was 2-1, so they gave up 2 goals again. So once again, they've given up 2 and 2 in the 2 games that Dane St. Clair started. But he didn't have any major blunders. Okay, that is what Rocco did have. 2 pretty big mistakes. And players make mistakes. Nobody's perfect, but he had 2 big ones. I think Dane played more steady. And I think he does need time then to readjust to the team. He basically had not played since before the World Cup. So I think, there is a little bit more time he needs maybe to adjust a little bit. But I don't think that the goalkeeper, like you said, I don't think that is really the main problem. It's a defensive collective. It's a collective problem that the teams are able to get from 1/3 of the field to the other third of the field with very little resistance. And then they can take shots oftentimes unmarked. People are taking shots and they are unmarked. There should not be anybody unmarked. Everybody should be covered. Make it difficult for the other team. Other teams are going to score, but make it more difficult for them.
Yeah. Let's hear it again from Maxi Falcón.
Maxi, buenas noches.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Pues todo bien. Considerando la mala racha que está atravesando el club en estos momentos y que después se viene un rival con el que se han enfrentado hace poco, que es Montreal, ¿se puede esperar mayor intensidad por parte de la defensa ahora que van a enfrentar un rival que conocen de hace no mucho?
Sí, a ver, todos los equipos y generalmente arriba tienen muy buenos jugadores. Como dije el partido pasado y lo dije ahora cuando arranqué, hay detalles en los cuales hay que seguir mejorando. Estamos recibiendo muchos goles y si te pones a ver el año pasado en el último tramo recibimos muy poco. Por ahí es cuestión de como te digo, de estar más concentrado. Nosotros como defensores hacemos media culpa. Obviamente que nos duele muchísimo que no hagan los goles y que de la manera que jugamos los partidos también, yo creo que a veces por ahí merecemos o un poco más, pero siempre digo también que el fútbol no es de merecimiento. Lamentablemente hay que hacer los goles y que no te hagan los goles. Sencillo. O sea, suena sencillo como te digo, pero trabajar en la semana, vienen rivales difíciles. Lo bueno que tenemos 2 partidos más de local y hay que tratar de hacerse fuerte, como te digo, y volver a la victoria, que es lo que necesitamos.
Un éxito, 2 cositas. ¿Tácticamente salieron más pausados para tratar de arreglar las cosas defensivas o fue solamente la acumulación de los partidos, cansancio? Y la segunda, se está comenzando a alejar el Supporter Shield. ¿Qué tan importante es terminar esta racha por fin para...?
Sí.
So, he's asked there, considering this rough patch that the team is in right now. You know, what has to change. And also, you're about to play an opponent, Montreal. This next game against Montreal is a team that you've recently played. They just played them a few weeks ago. Actually, it was the game that Berterame, the Montreal game on the road, was the game where Berterame was taken off the field in an ambulance, and it was 0-0 at that time, late in the game in the 81st minute. And Luis Suarez scored the PK. He scored the PK, and they won on that goal. But that was a game that was rather close against a team that was, I believe, 14th in the table on the East at that time. They're still pretty far down there, and they're playing the same team again. That was a very close game in Montreal just a few weeks ago. He was asked about that. By the way, I'm going to throw in here before I give his answer. This Montreal team that they're about to play is going to have Alexis Sanchez on it, Chilean star who has played in the biggest leagues in Europe. Arsenal, Manchester United, Inter Milan, Sevilla. This is a big time player who they just added, and they're very excited about his arrival, and he's going to be playing against the Inter Miami Stars. They all know each other, I'm sure, from South America and from Europe, and that's going to be an interesting matchup. Anyway, Maxi Falcon said, you know, again, we just have to work hard. We have to turn things around because I really feel like we deserved more. We deserve to win some of these games that we lost, but soccer is not about what you deserve. It's about scoring more goals and allowing fewer goals than your opponent. And I know that sounds simple, but that's simplistic, but that's really what it is. And we have 2 games at home now. He said, we have to take advantage of this now. We have 2 games at home. We have to take advantage and try to turn things around. And, you know, again, he didn't say how they're going to do it, but just that they have to do it, and that they have 2 games at home now. They have an opportunity with 2 games at home to try to get back on track.
Well, they need reinforcements too to get back and get healthy. Any updates on any of the guys that are out? Mikael is out. I know we talked about Reguilon. Silvetti's been out. Lujan. Anybody potentially coming back for these next 2?
Yeah, Mikael was on a stationary bike late last week. So he had not been out with the team yet. As far as the parts that we were allowed to see of training, he was on the stationary bike, which is a step in the right direction. We will see more this week if he's training with the group. The way it works is usually you don't see them at all. Then you see them on the stationary bike. Then you see them training off to the side with the trainer, but not with the group. Then they go with the group. And sometimes it's limited with the group and then full with the group. So, you know, he had an ankle injury. Those, for a soccer player, ankles are really important. They're pivoting and switching directions. Knees and ankles for a soccer player, it's, you know, vital that they get completely healed before they come back. Otherwise, they'll aggravate it. So the fact that he was on a bike was a step in the right direction. Does that mean he'll be able to play this Saturday? I don't know. Maybe the following week against Atlanta. Silvetti, we have not seen him, which that one is puzzling to me. It was a shoulder injury. He dislocated his shoulder and has not been seen since. We have not seen him anywhere. Have not seen him out on the bike, have not seen him out at training at all. So he has still been out. Tadeo Allende, you know, I want to point out the 2 guys who really made a huge difference in the playoffs last year when Mascherano made that change. And this is in defense of Guillermo Hoyos, is that the 2 players who were flanking Messi during that incredible run where they set the MLS record for playoff goals, the 2 guys up front with Messi were Tadeo Allende and Matteo Silvetti. Both of those guys are injured right now. Those 2 were the main. They were the main players, and you know, Allende set an MLS record. He had 9 goals.
And
he had 9 goals in the playoffs,
and he hasn't played at all. Yeah,
he has not played. He had knee surgery in May. He had a knee problem, recurring knee problem. Went to Spain, had surgery. He was on crutches. Now I think he's off the crutches. He's working out in the gym, but we have not seen him on the field yet. I don't know if he'll be able to come back potentially maybe for the playoffs. maybe he'd be able to come back. But he has not played since May at all. We have not seen Allende. And Allende did have an incredible run during the playoffs last year. So that player's missing. Silvetti has been out now several games since the shoulder injury. So those are two players in your attack that are out. Mikael was one of the better defenders so far this season, and he's out with the ankle. And then now in this last game, we haven't heard yet an update. Lujan left the game, and Reguilon left the game injured. Reguilon they can replace with Noah Allen. I think Noah Allen does a fine job at left back. I actually think a lot of times he's better. He had 3 assists in one game a few games ago. One of the few games that they did well during this stretch. So I think Noah Allen is a fine player to come in at left back. The center back position, if you're missing Mikael and you're missing Lujan, that gets more complicated because they end up moving Ian Frey to center back, and then they have Facundo Mura on the right side, and they're juggling around a lot, and that doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah, it seems to be. They're trying to find the right mix there, but Herman Beterame being back is the one plus on the injury front for sure, especially after that scary experience that he had. Missed 6 games, concussion protocol. You had a chance to, well, not just you, the media had a chance to talk to him recently about it. Let's hear what he had to say about being out for a while.
Siento el golpe, en automático ya siento que se me apaga, como digo yo, se me apaga la tele. Y bueno, nada, después ya despierto en la ambulancia y ya consciente y ya preguntando qué pasó todo, y a medida que iban pasando las horas me fui acordando de todo. Pero sí, fue muy preocupante, por lo menos por la tele, porque hasta mi familia la pasó realmente mal. Mi mujer casi que le atacó un ataque de pánico por la imagen que se miró, la imagen que se filtró, la pasó realmente mal. Pero bueno, ya estoy bien, ya estoy contento, así que nada, la familia está tranquila y eso es lo que me importa.
Well, you can tell there emotionally how this was still affecting him so much later. I asked him the question, can you tell us, do you remember what happened exactly when you got hit in the head? What happened right after that? What can you tell us? And he said, all I remember the hit, and then I blacked out. In his words, he said, I felt like my TV went off. He said, my TV went off. And I woke up in the ambulance. He said, I woke up in the ambulance and I asked what happened. And little by little, as the hours passed, I started remembering what happened. He said, but it was extremely scary. And he said, especially for those who were watching on TV and all of us spectators who were, it was very scary. And he said, especially for my family. Imagine his family is far, far away. He's in Montreal. They're watching the game on TV and they see that he goes unconscious. He blacks out and they take him away in an ambulance. And he said that his wife suffered a panic attack. He started to say she almost had a panic attack. He said, no, she did. She had a panic attack and it was very bad time for her. And then he lost his composure for a second. He had to contain himself. And he said, it was extremely difficult for his family, but now he's back, and he said he's happy and his family's at peace, and that's really all that matters. But obviously a very scary moment, and we know, those of us who watch the Miami Dolphins with Tua, the quarterback who had so many concussions, whenever you cover sports or watch sports, you see players have concussions. It's very, very scary. Very, very scary.
Yeah, concussions are no joke, and we've seen an emphasis on taking care of that and trying to safeguard players a lot more in several sports over the last few years, and this is another example of why that has to be the case. But did I talk a little bit more about just some life lessons he learned in his time away?
Siempre te da un choque duro y te da de pensar todo el tiempo. Te da ganas de tener que disfrutar cada momento, cada minuto, cada cosa que haga, disfrutarlo, sea acá en el club. Yo a raíz de eso te vas dando cuenta que en dónde estás, con qué equipo estás, con qué grupo estás, en dónde estás, también todas esas cosas hay que verlo, la familia también está contenta, está feliz, lo disfruto con mis nenas, entonces creo que como dijiste vos, te da un golpe que hay que dar la vuelta a la página en el sentido de disfrutar cada momento y bueno, creo que eso es lo que me llevo después de todo eso.
So he was asked, what lessons, what do you take away from that experience? He said, absolutely. He said it was a reality check. You get a hit like that, it's a reality check, and you realize what's really important, that you have to enjoy every moment, enjoy everything, whether it's here with the team, whether it's with my family, with my 2 daughters. He said, you just have to enjoy every moment and everything, it really does sort of put everything in perspective, and you have to turn the page and sort of move ahead with this new perspective, which he said he has. So
Yeah.
it was great to see him play. He started the game the other day after not having played 6 games in a row. He did start the game, and he had a couple of scoring chances that he was not able to finish, but it was great to see him back on the field after what he went through.
Yeah, it's good for him to not only, the best thing is get out there, because there obviously could be a little bit of that, trauma from such a scary moment, but to get through a first game, that's big for him mentally, I'm sure, and for his family too, to see him out there doing his thing like they're used to seeing. So season aside, good to have Herman back in his rhythm there for Miami and for himself too. We'll see if Miami can get back in a rhythm as a team. We'll be back next week to talk a little bit more after this upcoming game with Montreal, and see if anything changed. Any solutions were found. Any, our fixes starting to take. We talked about at goalie, maybe a little more time to tell how that switch will benefit the team. We'll find out after that game. But until then, we thank you as always for watching Inside Inter Miami and for listening to us. Remember, catch us on YouTube. Your favorite podcatcher if you can only listen to us. Until then, for Michelle Kaufman, I'm Andre Fernandez. Enjoy the games, everybody, and we'll see you next week.